Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training's podcast series entitled Lived Experiences with Traumatic Brain Injury. I'm your host, Melaney Grenz, and my guest today is Marchell Taylor. Marchell Taylor's life has been defined by crime since preteen years, a past shaped by adversity and hardship. By 2016, he found himself at a critical crossroads, awaiting trial, yet another trial on robbery charges at Denver County Jail. It was there that fate intervened. Today, Marchell Taylor stands as a powerful example of overcoming the odds and redefining one's future. Marchell, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Oh, our pleasure. How does it feel to beat such astronomical odds?
One way I try to have people envision it is if you're claustrophobic or not claustrophobic, imagine yourself living in a bathroom for 21 years, eating in the bathroom, sleeping in the bathroom, really. I tell kids this when I talk to them. I said, what if your mom made your bathtub your bed and said you could not come out of this bathroom for months because you were bad, because you're a bad kid, right? And so you have to eat here, and then she stick another brother in there with you and say he's on solitary confinement too. So you're both gonna live in this bathroom. You're gonna eat it here. You're gonna live here. You're gonna sleep here, right? I tell kids that I do when we talk to them, and so that's kind of how it was. So now I'm coming home, and finally getting. I was in two forms of prison. I would like to say mental prison and many forms of prison, but the physical form of incarceration of doing time. And I explain that to people, when you didn't have the tools and skills to deal with life stressors, grief, loss, hurt, pain, are the only tools and skills you had to deal with. It was drugs, alcohol, sex, violence. If that was the only thing you were taught, right? Going into that program after coming home, after doing 21 years and going back in 36 days facing life, that transformed my life forever. I mean, just being able to identify, again, I always say you go to 100 inmates right now in prison, and they can all be on trial for murder, or they can all have life sentences for murder. And you ask them, why did they do it? They're going to say, because he made me mad. He pissed me off. They won't say I was agitated inside all the time, or I lived in fear mode, or I lived in survival mode, because we don't identify that, right? So it was a freedom going into that program. And finally, for the first time after 47 years, getting my brain unstuck, unfrozen. I was like frozen psychologically in time. So yeah, you're 47 years old, still thinking like a 10-year-old. And then finally coming up to where you can really think like a 40-year-old, that's a form of freedom right there in itself, right?
Absolutely. Can you just take a step back for a minute? Just talk to us about the beginning, that tumultuous childhood growing up in Flint, Michigan. Oh man, that wasn't easy.
Well, I'll say this. Unfortunately, my oldest brother got caught up in the Flint water crisis. He did. He didn't get caught up in it, but he was the Flint housing director at the time. And I tell people this, that's one of the things that shed light on my case is the water crisis. Professor Kim Gorgens shedded light on the water crisis, and they followed some kids that drank water from Flint, the Flint River, for years. And then they followed kids that drank it from Grand Blanc and other areas. And they noticed that the kids from Flint were more angrier. They were more impulsive. This is research. This is actual research. So I drank that water growing up all my life until I was 18 years old, and not having a father figure, or the father figure that I did have at the 4 or 5 times he was in my life, at 6, 7 years old, he was teaching us how to steal. He was teaching us how to rob, because he was addicted to heroin. He came back from Vietnam and he had a bad addiction. And whatever he experienced in Vietnam, he did not want to continue to live with. So he numbed himself. Heroin, cocaine, everything. And so a lot of times that's the only thing that we can give our children. So we begin to superimpose those disorders onto our children. In his plight to get more drugs, he would show me and my other 2 brothers how to steal and connive and deceitful, because all he cared about was getting high. And so he didn't realize that was actually sealing his kid's fate to follow him to prison. You see what I mean? So that's what it was. Mom was a Christian. She tried to keep her kids, but her and him divorcing at a young age, and then she getting in bad relationships because she's stuck in survival mode now. That's all it takes is one person, and then stick your mom in survival mode. Now she's living in fear. Now she's living in hurt. Now she's living in pain. How much can we give our children when we're living in that type of disorder, that type of hurt and pain?
Right.
The brain is intricate. It'll shut down in order to survive itself. Mm-hmm. All of those threats, all of those things, it'll just shut down. And the only interest it'll show is only to survive. So it'll show the kids very little interest. It can't because it's in survival mode.
Right.
This is the childhood growing up.
Speaking of that, about age of 9, you're in a car and you hit your head on the dashboard secondary to a car collision, and you believe that was one of many concussions that you suffered.
Yeah. Absolutely. I've said after that, when I look back, because now, of course, I'm educated in the field. I'm not a scientist, but I would like to consider myself an expert. I've been studying it for 7-8 years now. So looking back, yes, when I hit my head, and back then, Flint, Michigan, again, we're not talking about a beautiful area, but it was pretty cool back in the early 80s. But they take a kid to the hospital, stitch him up, and send him home.
Yeah.
This is all you do. Anybody back then, if you fall, bust your head on a skateboard, they take you to the hospital, they stitch you up, give you some medications, send you home. All boys. This is just like a cultural thing, I guess, with hospitals. Not ever understanding what this injury can lead to. I hit the front of my eye, prefrontal cortex. So we don't look, but then as the child begin to grow into the disorder, especially if he's still in an environment to where the disorders is heavy and normal, no one ever sees it. But then they start saying, "Oh, he's bad because he's stealing, he's breaking into cars now, he's fighting, he's becoming dangerous, he's hitting people with stuff." You know what I mean? He's just really angry. This child is angry. No one looked at it as though it was a disorder. Only thing they looked at it as he was bad. He's bad. He's bad. For real.
For real, yeah.
That's autozygnosia. That's the first thing we say is they're bad. They're bad kids. They're not bad kids. They're kids that have bad behaviors that could be rooted. If you get them the right support, the right treatment, the right guidance, I'm that child. I finally got the right guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 1993, you found yourself caught in a downward spiral, committing a string of robberies that ultimately landed you in prison. Speaking of that, you told me earlier that you felt that your whole life was garbage and that you were destined to spend the rest of your life in prison. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, that's like when you get a glimmer, if you've never been in a healthy relationship, right? If you never experienced a healthy relationship, then you don't know what a healthy relationship is until you experience one. And then that becomes uncomfortable because you're so used to the unhealthy relationships, right? It's kind of how I explain it. So the relationship with the underserved community, it was normal to me to fight, to cry, to crack out, to alcohol out, to drug out, to, you know what I mean? That was a normal thing because I didn't know. So finally, when I got a glimmer of where I could learn to regulate my emotions, I could, because all of that time not regulating them, being snappy, somebody say something, you just snap out. That takes a lot of negative energy that we don't even know we carry with us. Yeah. And so that kind of, when I finally got an opportunity to see what a healthy relationship with myself looks like, the identification, it was like having an outer body experience. And then I began to understand that I wasn't out my behaviors. Those were learned behaviors. Those were conditions that formed me into a person like that. And that's when it was like, I am valuable, because no, you don't feel valuable. No, you don't feel loved. No, you don't feel. Why? I don't have the resources that the wealthy people have. I don't have the resources. My community is strapped for resources. We don't even know what mental health looks like.
Right. 2016, you'd robbed a Papa John's restaurant.
After doing 21 years.
Wow. In addition, you assaulted a Papa John's employee.
Mm-hmm.
Now, due to your record, you were facing many more years of prison time, but you were administered a screening tool for brain injury in Denver County Jail, and you were offered various therapies. And these therapies taught you about your brain. And as you previously told me, once your TBI traumatic brain injury was identified, you were offered grief counseling, various therapies, meditation techniques to control your impulsivity, and you're able to rewire your brain. And once again, you felt worthy and able to make a difference. Tell us about this revelation. This is pivotal. This is huge.
It is huge. Finally, for the first time in my life, and I want to thank Dr. Menegow for this, but my public defender, David Kraut, came to me and said, he looked at my case. He said, Marchell, you're facing an habitual criminal. He said, this is your 7th felony. He said, this is an aggravated robbery with a 2nd-degree kidnapping attached to this one. He said, so you're looking to never come home again on this one. He asked me how it happened. He said, I really want to ask you how this happened after doing, and he looked at the file. He said, after doing, how much time did you do? And he looked at the file and he said, did you just do 21 years? He said, you've been doing this since 93, 94. I said, yeah. He said, Marchell, I can tell you exactly how this happened. First time ever in my life, an attorney. He said, it's very hard for an individual to do that kind of time in prison. And for us as citizens and humans to expect them to come home and have it right. He said, you got mental health issues, man, probably traumatic brain injury and everything. I had never heard of this in my life, but nobody ever talked to me like this. Never, ever. And at this level, I'm suicidal. I know I'm not going back to prison, never. I know I'm not. I told him that. I told him, I said, I'm never going back. I said, I'm going to fight this case, and I want to tell the judge what happened to me after I started learning my mental health stuff. But I was suicidal on this case. Corey Shively is the one that came and ransomed me and talked to me, which is our business director and my brother, and he talked me out of it. And so when they started giving me this treatment, he sent me over to the old county jail, the men's transition unit, the only mental health program of its kind at that time. I get into this program. I read the Newsweek article with Kim Gorgens about traumatic brain injuries. The program I'm waiting to get a TBI screening done on, but Kim Gorgens, which is the one that explained to us in the Newsweek magazine, the results of traumatic brain injuries. Here it is. I'm sitting here facing life. I'm facing 300 years. I know I'm never coming home again. I really, in my heart, I felt, well, I'm done. Even the judge said that when he sentenced me to no years, but that's what happens. Dr. Nina Minagawa, she came in and became my psychologist. She started treating me with mindful meditation. I had never even heard of these. EMDR, CBT, DBT, EBT, GBT.
It's an alphabet, isn't it?
Hey, listen, so they threw it at me. It was like really performing an exorcism, because when you live in that level of trauma from a childhood for so long, it becomes normal. So to tell me to let loose of some of the very tools and skills I had to hide the molester and attempted molesting me and molesting my brothers as a kid. So I had to live with all of this inside of me for years and years and years. No wonder I was agitated. No wonder I was in survival mode. No wonder any little small thing will set me off. And then not having the right guidance and tools to deal with the grief, the loss. And then I lost my mom at 17. So that kind of sent me to. So they gave me the treatment. It transformed my life. What they didn't know is I studied business for 16 years in prison, marketing for 4. So what was transpiring is while they were teaching me and they were giving me the treatment, because I had never seen it and I knew the Black or minority community had never heard of this stuff before, because I come from those communities, I vowed to use our business to shed more light on this issue and get this treatment out in public, because it had changed, it transformed my life. For the first time, I can rationalize effectively. For the first time, I can breathe effectively. For the first time, I can reason effectively after this treatment. I can use effective judgment where now the judge don't have to judge me anymore. So it transformed my life. And I vowed that day, if Allah, God, give me an opportunity to come home, that I would shed more light on this. Well, I didn't wait to come home. I started shedding light on it in the county jail, and it went viral. The Rebuild Your Mind Challenge went viral. Yes, and Professor Kim Gorgens, our Wonder Woman of brain science, said this is a special inmate. And again, they didn't know I knew business. I'm a marketing expert. I'm good at marketing. And we start marketing it from the county jail. And here we are at People Magazine now, New York Times.
You and Dr. Kimberly Gorgens at the University of Denver. Together, you helped pass a bill in Colorado in 2021 to fund a pilot program for state prisons similar to the one that saved your life. This law requires the state to create a pilot program to offer screenings for brain injury to individuals in the criminal justice system who are about to be sentenced. So much good came out of your situation, truly.
Yeah, I studied law too for 20 years, so that kind of gave me an edge. When the research we used in my case, and the judge sided with mental health that day, Judge Brian Whitney, loved him to death. He sided with mental health that day because he had never seen an inmate transform like that in front of his eyes. I've been going in front of him for the last 2 years. He said he had never heard an inmate talk or speak about mental health like I spoke about it, or traumatic brain injuries. So this was like the deciding moment that he seen me change so much that I wanted to get it back to everybody. Yeah, he didn't give me one day that day. I went back. I had to go back and do 11 months. And because he didn't give me one day, I said, you know what? I want to bring this up in everybody's case. So I went back for 11 months. I hit the legal library and I wrote Senate Bill 21-138 because I seen the DOC didn't have anything like it at all. And now it's the first bill in the state of the United States that ever passed. That's big for a state to introduce TBIs into the criminal justice system. We aren't stopping there. But yes, we came home, put it in Keith Parker's hands, Parker and Stokes. Kim supported it, of course, because we used her name. She's our Wonder Woman of brain science. That is our Wonder Woman out here, and she is leading neuropsych. And again, let me tell you why we call her our Wonder Woman. This is important for this podcast to understand this. This brain scientist, reached back down in the minority community, in the underserved community, and began to provide us with resources. So, no, I didn't get one day in prison. Wrote the bill, came home. She pulled our company in, told me and Corey, rebuild your mind. She said, rebuild your mind, we'll live, and we'll get resources behind it. And I'll put students behind it. And next quarter, I'm going to make sure you got enough students to keep this thing going. This thing is big, and we want more people to do the work you're doing. And she did. Now, again, you see us in People Magazine. She just kept putting students behind us for 5-6 years. We get DU students working with us to build out the minority or the underserved community behavioral health systems. So this is amazing. She helped us secure $500,000 to do this work in the community, to build a behavioral health system directly into nonprofits. This woman is a Wonder Woman.
She is. Yes, she is. Marchell, you brought your staff with you today. Can you please introduce them all to us?
We have Nikki Mitchell here, which is our lead TBI screener. She does the lead neuropsych screening in the criminal justice community, Denver mainly. She has been responsible for she's the glue to our company. I can't say that. She came in as, we both work at Wellpower, the largest center. So she was a peer specialist over there. And I seen the work that she was doing over there. And I said, hey, look, I seen her specialty. I said, why don't you come over here to ABO's Advocacy and do some of these TBI screenings with us? Let us get you in so we can help also build your career out. And we want to make sure that she inspires other females to come over here to the neuropsych field because we need more of us doing the work. So she's lived experience, and she is the one that actually does the screenings. I'll let her tell you what she does. She's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, Nikki, go ahead. Tell us what you do there.
Hello, everyone. I am Nikki Mitchell. I am a forensic peer specialist. I'm also the lead neuropsych evaluation tech. And what I do is traumatic brain injury screenings for ABO's advocacy services for individuals that are incarcerated, youth, adults, men and women, also individuals within the community. Same youth, adults, men and women. And it's a pretty easy transition from working with Willpower and being a peer specialist because I also still offer those same services. With the TBI screenings, what I do is we get a referral from our partner, the Road Called Straight, and they bring them in to do an intake. And in their intake, we have a few questions regarding TBI and mental health services that they can take advantage of. And it's an option, it's not a requirement. Once a person shows interest in wanting to get a traumatic brain injury screening, usually it's a great segue for conversation around mental health. They like to open up more to the TBI aspect of it because they can identify and relate better. from experiences within their lives, either car accident, that's one of the main ones. We've had a couple of individuals come in that have had gunshot wounds to the head. We've had a couple of individuals that have come in from domestic violence. Those are more women. First, I give them a phone call to let them know that I've received their referral. And then we set up and schedule a time for them to come in and sit with me. And the first thing I like to do is kind of go over a little bit about them first. I like to reassure them that whatever they suffer with does not define them, and that this is not a diagnosis. This is simply helping them identify symptoms regarding their traumatic brain injury and however they acquired it. Once I make them comfortable in that area, I then just ask them a few questions that we have within the traumatic brain injury screening survey that will immediately let us know if these symptoms that they suffer are related to a traumatic brain injury. It's really simple. For some, they can do it on their own, but we always invite them to come in and get assistance with it, because even though it's more pictured as a traumatic brain injury, it still requires some very intimate detail, and a lot of people are private about the things that they go through. So we let them know, and then we take into consideration their level of education and understanding the questions and how to answer them. And so we want them to be as accurate as possible. So we always allow assistance with that process. And most people like it because within the traumatic brain injury spectrum, they don't always get to explain what took place and feel comfortable explaining what they suffer with, the things that they actually go through day to day. And so that just gives them a safe space to kind of open up about that, so that we can then guide them from taking the traumatic brain injury screening once they complete it. And at that point, we're able to offer them wraparound services, which involve therapy, job readiness, housing, sober living resources. Absolutely. And just depends on where they are if they want to go back and resume education. Some people want to go back to school. Some people are entrepreneurs. They were on a mission to start their own business, and the things that happened in their life kind of, brought that to a halt. And so my biggest and best and most favorite part of doing this work is helping an individual get back on their feet and return to a baseline of safety within all areas of their life. And I know that I'm doing this by the feedback that I get, and I absolutely love it. And just to, usher someone into a fresh beginning, it's been a rewarding joy.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this, Nikki. And once again, ABLE stands for Association of Young Business Owners. Nikki, they could not do that without you. Thank you so much.
No, we could not. We could not. Trust us. She's the lead African-American TBI screener in this state, actually. Yes, because we're like the leaders in TBI screening workforce. 48 people because of her screenings. We kept out of jail and saved the state $2.5 million because of the work that she does. And Tramel, he works with the youth. He is really a brainologist. He came home. He's one of our recovery partners and rose to prominence. This is Tramel. He's our
hello, everyone.
Hi, Tramel. Thanks for being here. Tramel Thomas, please tell us what you do with Marchell at ABOS, at the Association of Young Business Owners.
I do much the same thing as Nikki. You guys just met her. We do TBI screenings, provide peer support to both adults and the youth in our community. We operate the referral program. So we refer our clients out to therapists based on their needs, right? And of course, the modality. And we help bring about awareness to what trauma actually is, right? Mm-hmm. Because that word is used very loosely.
Yes. As
we all know, very promiscuously. And I think that we bring the definition to it, what it looks like, right? The symptoms, because it's difficult to help someone heal from something if they don't know, in fact, what is the actual cause of their trauma. And that's what we help them do. We help them focus on that and look at it, because I am of the belief, and we are of the belief, that trauma isn't something that happens to you, right? Trauma is a result of what happened to you, right? Because it literally means, in a Greek word, it derives from a Greek word of for wound, right? So it's a psychic wound of what happened to you somewhere in your life, and that wound, like any wound, is two-sided, right? On one end, it's raw because it's new and it's very sensitive to touch, right? So whenever something reminds you of that incident, hence the word trigger. If it's touch, it's, I don't want to go there. I want to talk about it. It reminds me of that incident. And we help people understand that that's called living in the present past, right? And then on the opposite side of that, a wound, if it's not healed properly or treated properly, it becomes scar tissue. It becomes very rough, rigid, right? And you become very closed off. You detach from yourself or disassociate from your authentic self, right? And we help individuals understand that the only way to properly heal is to become authentic in yourself. Authenticity, it helps you, right? And that's the thing with trauma. So overall, that's what we do: provide peer support and help them have targets, not just goals, but targets. And we help them achieve those targets.
He's modest though. He does, because he works with he makes sure our therapists are in line. He makes sure the CRMs. He makes sure our healthcare systems. Him and Corey make sure the healthcare system is set up. He runs this office like he does. He is the office director.
Well,
he does everything.
I guess
peer support. He makes sure our housing people are in housing.
Yeah.
He goes to the housing facilities and connects to them to make sure that we can really send people. He does a lot of work up here. He's just modest right now.
And I like to be able to provide the full wraparound service, not just by the word usage, but the actual action that's accompanied with that, right? Because it's okay to give someone some food for the day or some clothes for today, but what is that going to do in the long run? Right? What is that going to do? We want to make sure they have a full service, complete service, so that they can become sustainable and self-advocates. And that's what we premise, our whole organization behind: self-advocacy. That's our target. That's our goal. And in doing so, I think all of these things have to be in place. The housing is a key component to that, because one of our peers said, yeah, I do want to learn about my mental health, and I do want to hear about trauma and what I've been through, but I have nowhere to go tonight. It's cold outside. I'm homeless.
That's right.
And I took a step back and viewed from his vantage point, like, yeah, right, it's freezing outside. Yeah. Right. And so that is right now my number one priority, is get some warmth, put a roof over my head. So now we have the housing piece along with what we have.
Yeah, we just launched our housing. And I want to say this in addition, Tramel is not only one of the founders of ABOS from 23 years ago when we first really started, but he's also one of our recovery partners. You heard all of what he's doing, but what you didn't hear is he's in a halfway house right now. So he came to that halfway house. We brought him up here. Of course, he's one of the founders. We brought him up here, and he's been transformed. His life has been transformed. He didn't understand mental health and trauma either until the 2016 case. None of us did. So all of that stuff, all the expertise that he do up here, he's doing it while he's in a halfway house. And that's what we want to show other individuals. No matter where you at, what you're doing, you can succeed just like he's succeeding, and the rest of us that came from prison, because treatment. He's in treatment. It's just amazing to watch how he has grown since he's been home. Well, to the director he is, right? Really.
Well said. We are all lucky that you're in this position, Tramel.
Yes.
Beacon of hope for many. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And lastly, I will say this: I've always looked at my lived experience through prison, right, as a thing I wanted to shy away from. I didn't want to talk about it, right? That was a piece of my trauma, right? Because I thought or I perceived that people viewed me as in a certain light or less than a citizen, right? And it wasn't until I got into this work that my lived experience actually means something. That's like having a degree in a in a certain field, in a certain area, right? And this is a point where my lived experience and the things that I thought was bad and hadn't been looked at in a certain light is actually highlighted in this in this arena, right? And it feels so good to be able to say that and witness that and speak about it and talk about my life, my path, and what brought me to this point. Because people is relatable and they can understand that. Mm-hmm. So when I speak to them, I'm speaking to them from a raw and authentic place. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, it's very important.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
All right. Lived experience with the expertise of a business mind.
That's right. That's right. All right, Trammell. Thank you for your time, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you very much. Guys, have a wonderful day.
You too. Okay. You connected with fellow inmate Corey Shively, who learned that he too had a TBI. And he started a business called ABOS Advocacy, an Association of Young Business Owners Advocacy, among many things, connected community members to treatment. Can you speak to that more about Corey and ABOS Advocacy, please?
Yes. So ABOS marketing was already in existence in 2008. All of us came from prison and decided to start our businesses from prison. While I was doing a 20-year sentence, I started ABOS in 2000. That's when I met Trammell. He was a little youngster back then. And I started introducing business to these guys. Corey came in 2007. I introduced him to ABOS. He came home and launched ABOS marketing, but he had already had a company, Hustle and Flow, a music company that he had been doing with other major industry guys. We launched a business. I ended up going back to prison, coming home. And then in 2016, when I left and was facing the life sentence, when me and Corey is like a brother. He's like a brother to me. He is. He's not just a business partner. He is one of the founding fathers of ABOS, like Trammell is, and myself. But he's a brother to me as well. So when I went back to prison in 2016, after only being out for 36 days, Corey has always been my peer supporter. He's always been the one, when I do come home, he's there for me. He helped me get to the halfway house. Then when I go back, so he couldn't figure out, why does he keep going back? This dude have a business mind. He's a business genius. What is wrong with Marchell? He used to always say that. And I'd be like, man, I don't know what's going on with me. Do some push-ups, because that's what we say in prison, right? Do some push-ups. So we come home. I go back 2016. I find out I have the traumatic brain injury. I call Corey, because Corey's the one that talked me out of suicide. When I went back in 2016, I told you I knew I was not going back to prison. I said, I cannot go do another 4 years. I can't do it no more. I'll just take my pills. And Corey's like, no, bro, we'll get through this. We'll get through this. So he coached me through the whole thing. Then when we found out I had a traumatic brain injury, I said, bro, let's launch the Rebuild Your Mind Challenge. Since I'm facing life in here, I said, and we didn't know we had these mental health issues. I said, and Kim Gorgens showed us, this scientist is showing us that we keep going back in front of this judge because we don't have the ability to rationalize. We don't have the ability to reason effectively. I said, so we got to put that out there. I said, so let's start challenging judges to talk about their own mental health issues.
So that's where Rebuild Your Mind challenge.
That's where Rebuild Your Mind came in. So I said, let's start challenging judges. We're going to challenge parole board members. So it's 40 of us inmates. So it's 40 of us inmates in this mental health program. I went to every inmate. I said, hey, have you ever had 40 letters sent to your judge? And they were like, no, bro, I'm facing life too. I said, well, 40 of us is going to send a letter to your judge, challenging your judge to let's say it's Melaney, the Melaney Grenz Rebuild Your Mind Challenge. Melanie didn't know she had a mental health issue. We wonder if you know you had one. And if you have, how do you deal with yours in a healthy or unhealthy way? That's the challenge. The question is, how do you deal with yours? How did you deal with yours? So thousands of letters. We wrote thousands of letters to each other's judges, to the parole board. So we wrote it to Kyle Clark at the news station. I'm serious. At least 1,200 letters went out from that one pod. Parole board said, okay, we get it. So now Rebuild Your Mind Challenge. I mean, we challenge, no one was safe. We figured if we did not know we had these mental health issues and we're living in it and we're studying being judged, how many other people out there don't know that they have them? How many professionals don't know? And so it went viral. So the FOP, president of FOP, which we're honoring him this month, Mike Jackson, Deputy Mike Jackson, president of Fraternal Order Police Lodge 27, was the first African-American male to ever sign on to work with inmates with a traumatic brain injury in that county jail. And he's the president of FOP. So he joined us. When he seen what we were doing, he was like, man, if inmates is doing this, I wonder how would this be able to affect officers as well that can't talk about this is a real destigmatization. He was the first deputy in the history of Colorado to take his challenge. While I was facing life, he went and met Corey at Corey's house, did his challenge, and challenged other people. And then that got to my judge. See, that's what happened. That it got to my judge. And my judge was like, he had never seen. He was like, we've never experienced an inmate run a campaign for mental health from the county jail. Okay. That's what happened. It went viral. It kind of not viral, but viral in Colorado. Viral enough where the judge was like, this guy has changed his life over the last 2.5 years. And now he's shedding more light on mental health and traumatic brain injuries than most of the organizations directly from this county jail. So he didn't give me 1 day. He didn't give me 1 day, and I was facing 300 years. Not 1 day in prison. Not 1 day. But I had to go back and do that 11 months. And that's where Corey began to put his business mind, because Corey is business minded. Corey is the one that when you see us on TV, when you see our logos, when you see our brand, it's got to be crisp. It's got to be, he really does everything. He is. I'm the face. I'm more of I'm the PR and the communication director. The work you see do is the team behind me. You know, they say, oh, no, Marchell, you the one did all the, no, we work together as a team. Absolutely. But they put the grunt of the work in.
Wow. Great team you have. Great team. We here at the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training believe that every state should be required to provide brain injury screenings and treatment for those serving sentences. We're working on such a validation at this time, actually, in juvenile detention centers. Our goal is to push this screening tool out to all 50 states after validation. So, Marchell, your story reminds us that when we address the underlying causes of behavior, such as undiagnosed brain injuries, we unlock the potential for profound healing and redemption, not just for individuals, but for entire communities. Thanks so much for sharing your story and your staff today. I'm sure that your journey has offered profound hope and inspiration to all who've listened today. Truly, it's been an honor and a privilege for all of us here at the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training to connect with you and your staff. I sincerely hope that our paths will cross again in the future. Marchell, as you stated before this interview, let's go and transform some lives together.
As we shall, from trauma to triumph. It's real. It's attainable. Get treatment. If you ask me anything, get the identification. Understand what mental health looks like, the signs and symptoms.
Very true. Once again, thank you for being here.